Hello, healthy people, and welcome back to the Organelle podcast. Today, we're exploring brain food, how you can maximize your mental performance through nutrition. We're going to navigate through what we should eat, what we shouldn't, and why, and even touch on the nature of stimulants and the solution to the afternoon slump. As always, I'm Xavior Greenhalgh, and joining me will be none other than the Organelle digital health platform's founding practitioner, Lionel Godwin. So without further ado, let's all take the next step on our health journeys. Here we are again, my dear friend. How are you doing today?
Xavier, it's been a long week, but I'm glad to be back. You're looking well.
I'm glad to hear it. Always happy to be here with you. And the listeners should be happy as well because we are talking about something spectacular today. Something that personally helps us both because we need a lot of energy and a lot of focus to sit down and do these recording sessions in order to give you this tremendous value. That's right. Today we're talking about how to eat to optimize brain health and performance. So, Lionel, as we always do, could you take us through with a beautiful top level definition? How does nutrition actually interact with your brain?
Really good question. I think we need to be very aware that nutrition plays a really critical role in brain function and brain development. I think that's important to acknowledge. Proper nutrition, including a balanced intake of macros and micronutrients, vitamins and minerals, really helps support our cognitive function. It really helps with our memory, and it really helps with our learning and our capacity to retain that information. You know, Additionally or conversely, anytime we've got deficiency or imbalances in our diets, that can have a really negative impact on the brain. It can really impair the brain, really impair mood and behavior and cognitive function as well. So brain food, it plays a really important part.
Yep, just like everything else, our food is the thing that determines all the yummy nutrients in our blood, and our blood feeds our brain, so
Well,
lines up
exactly.
perfectly for me.
Yep, absolutely.
Right, so are there, I know absolutely nothing about this, so I'm excited to drill down into your lovely brain. Haha. Are there larger or simple mechanisms behind this that you could explain to us? It's like, what's actually happening when the blood goes into the brain and tries to distribute those nutrients?
So, what's happening is the brain uses all of those different nutrients that get in. And when I'm talking about those nutrients, I'd like to define some of those for you if possible,
Hmm.
Xavier. So, when I'm talking about brain food, I'm looking at, really obviously nutrient dense foods, which I'm always focusing on, including fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, and healthy fats. There are some very specific foods that evidence and testing over the years has really proved a direct link with great brain function. That includes, good fatty fishes, nuts, seeds, berries, and dark leafy greens. These all Eating these things regularly throughout the day, maintain a really steady blood sugar levels, which are really important for optimal brain function. So we want those blood sugar levels to be, really stable so that the brain can use the nutrients to really improve its function. You know, Protein obviously plays a big part in the brain. The brain requires a lot of protein, particularly when it comes to memory and retaining information. That plays a really important part in the way the cells in the brains regenerate, and we want them to be regenerating and reproducing all of the time using the building blocks that we get from our nuts and seeds and our dark leafy greens and our grains, and our good fatty fishes to really assist the brain, not only the brain chemistry, but the brain cells themselves.
Yeah, there's obviously having a healthy, diverse, balanced diet. It's going to do awesome things for your overall health, and of course, your overall health is going to include your brain. Something I want to dig down on because I think it's of real interest to me and hopefully the listener as well is how hormones interact with our brain because I know that has a lot to do with mood and energy, and I know that hormones, uh, by virtue of being hormones, are derived from a lot of the nutrients we eat. So, how does that indirect relationship work? How does the nutrients we eat affect our hormones, which then in turn affects our mood?
Okay, so let's just look at what happens if we're having a really poor diet. And what does a poor diet look like? If we're eating a lot of highly processed, high sugar foods, fried and fatty foods, or we're drinking excess alcohol and stuff, and these foods are always full of preservatives, artificial preservatives, and additives, and emulsifiers and fillers. These have a really detrimental effect on the way the brain works. They increase the inflammation within the brain. They limit the brain's capacity to use these nutrients in a positive way on the brain. So that then disrupts the neural transmissions and the neural pathways that the brain relies on for good cognition. So, we really need to be very cognizant of the fact that if we want to continue to keep our good brain function going, we need to limit our access to these high sugar, highly processed, highly refined foods. And again, sleep, because of the restorative and the regenerative impact that it has from a hormonal perspective, is really, really, really important in improving that brain function. It's also when we sleep is when the brain consolidates memory as well. So again, if we're going to consolidate memory, having these good foods and limiting the poor foods is going to help with the overall hormonal dispositions within the brain, but also the brain's chemistry as well.
Are there foods that we should specifically avoid when it comes to brain function?
Oh, absolutely. So fried foods. So McDonald's. You and I have spoken about McDonald's previously. Any foods
Yeah.
that are I have high trans fats in them. Any foods that are highly processed. Any foods that are highly refined, and any foods that are really high sugar. So we're talking. If we want to break those down, we're talking about lollies, cakes, chips, potato chips and the like. We're talking about high sugar drinks. Combine high sugar drinks with alcohol as well. So I'm talking about the drinks that a lot of you young people drink these days, which is the spritzers and I don't even know what they're called, but all these high sugar vodkas and type foods. These are really detrimental to brain and brain function and can really impact the brain, but more importantly as well, cause such a disturbance to the brain that it really starts to impact our moods and our cognitive function. Because the brain, as when our moods are poor, it's something that we feel in the brain. It's the brain that is being overwhelmed when we, really in a poor mood or have this foggy situation going on with the brain where we feel as though we're just not ourselves. We're not dealing with stress well. We're not dealing with relationships well. Our mood is always down. Um, you know, Poor nutrition and poor quality foods has a massive impact on that.
Gotcha. Okay. Why specifically trans fats? What are trans fats doing to our
So
neurochemistry?
trans fats are what we call a hydrogenated fat. They've got extra chains of carbons and oxygen in them that are they cause a lot of oxidative stress within the body, which then creates a lot of inflammation. And the one thing the brain doesn't like is inflammation. Now, we can get inflammation from the trauma to the brain, like a head knock, but we also start to damage brain cells through high inflammation in the brain. Once brain cells are really damaged beyond repair, then they don't regenerate, and then that then can lead to early onset dementia, Alzheimer's, all sorts of brain conditions that can be avoided by not having these high trans fats foods, this highly hydrogenated fat that is really dangerous not only to our brain but to every cell within our body and uh, equally disrupted to the brain as they are to the heart. The damage they do to the heart is extraordinary over time. So, we've really got to limit these hydrogenated fats, and they don't generally come in baked goods. You go to the shops and you buy, pre-baked cakes and if you're not making them yourselves, or lollies or chips or chocolates, and the energy bars that you buy, high energy drinks that you buy are not drinks generally. They're not if they're not got no fat in them, it's not going to be an issue. But there's so many energy bars that I see people drinking. There's so many protein drinks that I see people drinking that can generally be very high in these trans fats, these hydrogenated fats that are so dangerous to the human body, and most importantly, the brain and the heart.
Yeah, funny you should say that, Lionel, because I think it's really important to narrow down on that because it's something we all read the nutritional label and we're like, okay, there's polysaturated fats, monosaturated fats, trans fats, but I don't think a lot of us understand. So, could you take us through what we should really be thinking when we look at that? Like, are saturated fats good and all the other ones are bad? How does that work?
It's a discussion that I think we should have on a separate podcast. I think we should look at in the future. Really look at narrowing down our discussions on fats. They there's so much misinformation around fats that we really need to have an extended session on it. You know, the it's there's trans fats, obviously the worst as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
Polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats are very good for us. I like it when we can get some good polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats. And saturated fats sit somewhere in between those. Uh, um, so wherever possible, we should try and focus on our healthy fats. And when I say healthy fats, I'm talking about fats that are coming from our nuts and our seeds and our avocados, our olive oils, and things like that. Fat and fat absorption. It's a subject that I like to focus on a lot, because what we have within our bodies are a lot of vitamins and minerals that rely on fats for absorption. So it's really important that we understand how fats are required in our cell membranes, for instance. And it's something that in this podcast we won't have time to dwell on. But if we can focus on those polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats initially, when we're looking at the good and bad fats, and avoid as many bad trans fats as we can, and limit our saturated fats to some extent, that's a really good place to start.
Okay, I've learned something. That's a good framework to have in my head. Okay, let's move right along. Fat, obviously, super important for your brain because it's the hormone thing. Let's go to the next big thing, which will upset a lot of people, myself included, probably stimulants. What
Yes,
is your opinion on stimulants when it comes to brain? I know you love your coffee,
yes.
but generally, what are we thinking?
Well, stimulants in and of themselves, particularly if people are really reactive to stimulants, and by stimulants we're talking mainly about caffeine, obviously drugs and other things. It depends on your tolerance. For a lot of people, stimulants can be really disruptive for sleep, and for brain function. Sleep, as we've alluded to earlier, is really, really important. So stimulants can really be very, very dangerous for us. In a lot of people, they can cause the jitteriness and anxiety, which can really affect our overall health and well-being. But stimulants in moderation can also have some good health benefits for people. For myself, I can have a coffee and go to sleep. I can have 4 coffees a day and not even realize it, and put my head down and go to sleep within 2 minutes of putting my head on the pillow. But I'm not affected by them overly. But other people have a very low tolerance. So it's very much down to an individual to understand if they have, if they get this jitteriness or anxiety once they've had a stimulant, then they should be aware of that and limit the amount of stimulation that they have. Because the most, as I said, the thing that it most impacts is our sleep. And that then has a really profound impact on the brain.
So it's not directly influencing the brain too much, but by relation, because it screws with sleep so much, and sleep is one of the most important things for brain function, it will catch up with us in the end.
But it can have dramatic effects on people. Some people have just a poor tolerance to stimulants. It can have a really profound effect on them, not just with sleep. As I said, it can make people jittery. It can make them anxious as well. They get a racing heart sometimes, or uh, and just feel that anxiety building. But it's very much an individual thing. As I said, I've never had a reaction to the only stimulant I really have is either alcohol or coffee, and I limit my alcohol consumption, and I certainly don't overindulge in alcohol. I'm a very moderate alcohol drinker, and I would never drink to excess. I just don't like the feeling that comes with excess alcohol, and that really does disrupt sleep. Alcohol and caffeine are probably the two greatest disruptor of sleep for most people.
I want to take a moment to kind of delve into something that might be a bit niche for most people. Do you have a particular opinion on pre workout when it comes to how those affect brain function?
Not as they
Selfish
directly,
question.
not as they directly affect brain function. I think my own personal view, and this is not backed by any scientific studies that I'm aware of or have seen. Um, I think they're a product of the modern advertorial exposure that we get through social media and magazines and the like. I personally don't and have never taken a pre-workout, primarily because I know for a fact that if was to have a black coffee or a beetroot juice, I'm going to get a far greater effect than I'm going to get from a stimulant. And conversely, I'm also not getting all of those preservatives and those additives and those emulsifiers and those fillers and those artificial uh, substances in my beetroot juice or my good quality organic coffee that I personally drink. So I'm not a fan of them. I believe there's too much hype around them, too much misinformation around them, and too much celebrity endorsement that is not backed by science. I just don't believe that there are any benefits to it, and I'm yet to see a study that can say without fear or favour that they work and that they work well. I am, to be honest, very anti them.
Okay. We'll have to. Well, next time you come up near me, we'll have to give you some. We'll take you down.
Yeah.
You can't be so hateful if you've never actually had it.
Yes, hateful is probably a strong term to use, but it's probably more as I'm more a cynic or a skeptic than a hater.
Okay, we'll save that for a future episode after you
We
give it a
will,
try. That'll
along
be
with
fun.
facts. I would really love to do a podcast on fats and go through all of the detail around fats so people have a really good understanding of fats.
100%. The people at home can look forward to that one coming out. I'm going to bring us back with something something to end up on, something to give the users a bit of value, a problem that a lot of people face, and I think is going to be really valuable to them. The afternoon slump, Lionel. Everyone has
Yeah.
experienced it at some point in life. You have a big meal for lunch, and then for some reason, 3 p.m., 4 p.m., your brain gets all foggy, and you can do nothing but sit down for those last few hours of your workday. What is that, and how does that play into brain function and nutrition?
Yeah, look, the afternoon slump is something that it's just a natural dip in energy that a lot of people have. Uh, People typically experience it between about 1 and 3 p.m. As a rule. For me, one of the things I like to do to mitigate against an afternoon slump is I'll engage in some activity. So, as you're aware, in my office I have a stationary bike and a rowing machine, and so when I feel a slump coming on, I'll jump on the rower for 15 minutes or on my stationary bike for 15 minutes, and for me that really takes away that afternoon slump. Alternative to that, I'll sometimes have a 20-minute power nap. Now, I have the value of being able of working for myself, so I can do that. And I'll have a 20-minute power nap, and that completely invigorates me again. And it's something that in America, actually, there's many businesses that now have sleep pods within their businesses that allow their people to sit into a sleep pod. It becomes very dark and quiet, and they allow their staff to have a 20-minute power nap because productivity increases have been measured to be off the charts as a consequence of doing that. The other thing that I do is I make sure that I'm really well hydrated. That makes a big difference around trying to mitigate against that slump. Meditation or deep breathing exercises I've also found to be very useful. That then allows the brain and the brain's chemistry to sort of reset or rebalance and take away that fogginess. So, exercise, a good healthy snack, good protein, some good fats in that snack makes a lot of sense. So, for instance, a recommendation that I make for people to overcome an afternoon slump is to make some homemade hummus and eat it with a carrot stick or some celery sticks or capsicum sticks. So you're getting good fat, good fiber, good blood sugar level stabilizers in there as well. And then, just some form of relaxation or meditation, I find works really well and clears the brain of that fogginess.
Yeah, sounds like a beautifully elegant solution to me. I think we'll call it there for today, Lionel. Thank you so much for your time.
Great to be with you again. Take care, Xavier.